In the quiet hum of a city night, beneath the flicker of neon lights and the rhythm of unseen electricity, something whispers through the void. It is not a sound nor a presence one can name, but a tremor, subtle, rhythmic, as though reality itself is breathing. The air feels denser here, heavy with a question older than thought itself. What lies beyond the edge of what we call real? Imagine the world as a vast, shimmering canvas stretched taut across a hidden frame. We walk upon its surface, seeing depth, feeling weight, believing we understand space and time. Yet beneath that surface, beyond our three-dimensional comfort, lurks an architecture unseen. The ancients called it spirit, mystics called it energy, scientists call it space-time curvature. But what if all of them were glimpsing the same thing through different eyes? A fifth dimension, not fantasy but forgotten truth. As the camera sweeps across a mountain ridge, clouds rolling in like a celestial tide, the narrator's voice rises, steady and contemplative. The Earth rotates silently through a black ocean of nothingness. Galaxies spin, light travels billions of years to greet our retinas, and yet the vast majority of existence remains invisible. Not because it isn't there but because we were never meant to see it. Like fish in water, we cannot imagine what lies beyond the surface of our own element. Somewhere in the flicker between thought and dream, physics and faith, something stirs. Scientists have long said that the universe has 4 known dimensions, 3 of space, 1 of time. But every equation, every theory, every mystery that remains unsolved hints at something more. A hidden layer where the impossible becomes possible, where cause and effect lose their grip, and where what we call ghosts might not be spirits at all, but shadows cast by something pressing against our world from beyond. Visuals shift to microscopic scales, the trembling of atoms, the dance of electrons around invisible cores. The narration slows, each word deliberate. Between the particles there is emptiness, but that emptiness hums with potential, a silent storm of quantum foam and energy fields. Reality, the voice whispers, is not solid. It is stitched together by patterns too fine for our senses. The hum deepens, the tone shifts, mystery laced with awe. A scientist once said that what we perceive as empty space is anything but. It's a sea of invisible forces, overlapping waves, vibrating strings of possibility. If we could step outside our dimensional box for even a second, we might see that we are surrounded by layers of existence, folded neatly into each other like pages in an infinite book. Each page is a world, each vibration a life. And we, blind, anchored in our 4-dimensional perspective, can only touch the surface. The screen darkens. A single light flickers. A question echoes. What if every strange shadow, every unexplained sound, every déjà vu, is not a trick of the mind, but a glimpse of the fifth? The music swells, deep, reverberating like the heartbeat of the cosmos itself. The fifth dimension, unseen yet omnipresent, waits behind the veil of perception, its influence bleeding through time, space, and consciousness. As dawn breaks over the curvature of the Earth, light spills across the horizon, and for a moment, it feels as though the world itself remembers something ancient. The unseen hum grows louder. The narrator's final words linger in the air like a prophecy. The ghosts are not coming from the past. They are coming from beyond. They are not haunting us, we are haunting them. In a flat world there is no up or down, only forward, backward, left, and right. The beings that live there, the Flatlanders, glide across an endless sheet of existence, their lives unfolding in 2 dimensions. They see each other as lines, never circles or spheres. To them, the idea of height, of something existing above or below, is madness. And yet, if a sphere were to pass through their world, they would see it appear as a dot, then a growing circle, then shrinking again to nothing. To them it would look like magic. To us it would be geometry. This is the haunting brilliance of Edwin Abbott's 1884 novella, Flatland, a romance of many dimensions. Through the eyes of a humble square, we glimpse the prison of limited perception. Abbott's world is a metaphor, a mirror held up to humanity itself. Just as the square could not imagine a 3rd dimension, perhaps we, bound to our 4-dimensional experience, cannot imagine the 5th. The Flatlanders live convinced that their world is all that exists, that what cannot be seen cannot be real. The same illusion governs us. Picture a Flatlander witnessing a 3-dimensional being. They would see only the faintest cross-section, a slice of something larger. They could never comprehend the full form, no matter how much they measured, analyzed, or believed. Now imagine we are those Flatlanders. We peer through telescopes and microscopes, building grand theories and complex equations, yet all the while we may be observing mere shadows of a deeper, richer reality, one that exists not beyond the stars but beyond perception itself. The narration slows, the tone deepens. The world around us fades into abstraction. Streets flatten, buildings lose depth, and even light seems compressed into lines. The viewer feels the confinement, the claustrophobia of limited existence. If you were born in Flatland, the voice says, would you believe someone who claimed to have seen the third dimension? The question lingers like a challenge, daring the mind to stretch beyond comfort. For the Flatlanders, the concept of a higher realm is heresy. Their priests forbid the mention of the third dimension, labeling it an illusion, a threat to order. And yet, a few visionaries, madmen, artists, scientists, whisper of visitors who come and go as if passing through walls. They are branded delusional, their words buried. The parallel is unmistakable. Humanity, too, resists what it cannot measure. When confronted with the impossible, we call it supernatural, myth, or madness. The imagery turns surreal, a Flatlander watching helplessly as objects appear from nowhere, vanish into thin air, or morph without logic. These are miracles from a higher dimension, but to the two-dimensional mind they are ghosts. What would we call such phenomena in our own world? Poltergeists? Spirits? Glitches in reality? The connection is undeniable. If beings from a fifth dimension were to intersect with our space, would they not appear to us as fleeting apparitions? Lights, shadows, whispers, existing half in, half out of our perception? The narrator's tone grows softer, introspective. Perhaps the ghosts that haunt our world are not dead souls, but living entities in a reality above ours. Perhaps we are the flatland of the cosmos, our senses limited, our science incomplete, our understanding still bound by invisible walls. The visual transitions to an endless sheet of light, rippling gently, and above it, a vast ocean of color and movement that the Flatlanders can never see. The metaphor becomes a mirror. What ocean lies above us, shimmering unseen? The story of Flatland becomes prophecy. Abbott's tale was not simply a satire of Victorian society, it was a warning. It reminds us that arrogance blinds, that certainty is the greatest barrier to discovery. What we perceive as reality may only be a fraction of existence, a single layer in a structure far grander and more mysterious than our minds can grasp. As the camera pulls upward, breaking through the paper-thin surface of Flatland, the viewer rises into our three-dimensional world, then higher still into the stars. The voice returns, low and resonant. Every age has its Flatland. Every species, its horizon of perception. The question is not whether there is a fifth dimension. The question is, can we ever step into it? The music swells and the scene fades into silence, an invitation to doubt everything we think we know. What? The oldest traveler in the universe. It crosses the abyss between stars, carrying messages older than Earth itself, stories of creation, death, and everything in between. Yet light is also a riddle. It behaves like a wave and a particle, both everywhere and nowhere, depending on who, or what, is watching. To physicists, it is the key to understanding the universe. To philosophers, it is the metaphor of truth itself. But what if light is more than both? What if it is the messenger of dimensions, an emissary from realms we cannot touch? Imagine standing in a darkened observatory, the only sound the soft ticking of instruments as a telescope peers into the endless black. A faint beam from a distant star reaches your eye, a flash of something that began its journey billions of years ago. That single photon has crossed space, time, and gravity wells, surviving collisions and fields, bearing witness to epochs of change. Yet it arrives now, in this moment, whispering across the vast gulf between dimensions. It is as if light remembers something we cannot. For centuries, humans have worshipped light as the source of life and clarity. Ancient Egyptians saw Ra's chariot blazing across the heavens. Greeks imagined Apollo's bow firing golden arrows through the sky. But science shattered myth only to find new mysteries hidden inside. Isaac Newton bent sunlight through a prism and revealed color, proof that light held structure, a hidden spectrum within. Then James Clerk Maxwell showed that light was an electromagnetic wave, a vibration moving through the invisible fabric of reality itself. And yet, when Albert Einstein came along, the mystery deepened. Light, he found, does not obey our logic. No matter how fast we move, light's speed remains constant. Time bends to preserve it. Space warps around it. Everything in the universe, every law of physics, seems to kneel before this single, unwavering constant. The faster you go, the slower time flows, the shorter distances become, but light never falters. It stands like a bridge between worlds, untouched by our limitations. The narration slows, cinematic and deliberate. Why? The voice asks softly. Why does light not belong to time? In the blackness of space, light curves around monstrous bodies, black holes that bend existence into impossible shapes. Einstein predicted it, but seeing it changed everything. The first image of a black hole's event horizon was not a shadow. It was a ring of light, tortured by gravity, bending around the unseen. That luminous halo was not just a photograph. It was a message. Light was showing us the shape of the invisible, tracing the outline of a dimension we cannot enter. But there's something even stranger. In quantum physics, light refuses to decide what it is. It passes through two slits as a wave of probabilities, yet when observed, it collapses into a single particle. It behaves differently when we watch it. The observer changes the observed. It's as if light knows when it is being seen. Scientists have repeated this experiment countless times, and the result is always the same. Reality behaves differently when measured. The implication? Consciousness, perhaps, is not separate from the structure of reality. Maybe we are not passive spectators, but participants in a cosmic dialogue between dimensions. The screen fills with visual metaphors, light weaving through interstellar dust, refracting through droplets of rain, bouncing off skyscrapers and into human eyes. What if light, the voice continues, is not merely energy? What if it is communication? A vibration that carries information not just across space but across realities? Light's duality, its existence as both wave and particle, might be the echo of higher dimensional behavior. If the fifth dimension truly exists, it could be where light's true form resides, its dual nature a mere projection into our limited frame. We see only its shadow, just as flatlanders saw only a slice of the sphere. What if every photon we detect is a fragment of something greater, an interdimensional ripple we cannot yet perceive in full? The camera dives into the heart of a supernova. The explosion radiates light across the electromagnetic spectrum, gamma rays, X-rays, visible beams, radio waves, each a different frequency, each telling a different story. Some of that light will never reach us. It will stretch, fade, and fall silent as the universe expands, its message lost beyond the cosmic horizon. But some will travel forever, crossing spacetime until the end of all things. That persistence is not random, it's law. Light endures because it exists on the border between the finite and the infinite. In ancient texts, light is often synonymous with the divine. Let there be light, says creation. Enlightenment, illumination, revelation. Even now, our metaphors for knowledge are soaked in radiance. But perhaps there's more truth in those old symbols than we admit. What if light truly is the first interface between our dimension and the next? Every photon that touches your skin is a messenger from the unseen, an emissary from a realm that does not age, does not decay, does not belong fully to our world. A shift in tone, quiet, almost mournful. But light can die, the voice admits. Or at least it can be devoured. Black holes consume light with insatiable hunger, bending it into spirals until it can no longer escape. For decades, physicists believed that what falls into a black hole is lost forever. Yet Hawking's equations whispered otherwise, that light leaves behind an echo, radiation born from the very edge of nothingness. Even in darkness, information tries to escape. The fifth dimension, perhaps, is not a place of endless void, but a reservoir of what light remembers. Then comes the paradox. Photons experience no time. From the moment a particle of light is born, say, in the heart of a star, to the moment it hits your eye, it experiences 0 seconds. To the photon, emission and absorption are the same instant. It doesn't travel, it simply is. That means, from light's perspective, there is no distance between the beginning and the end of the universe. All of existence happens simultaneously. To us, that's incomprehensible. But to light, perhaps, that is the fifth dimension, where past, present, and future converge into one eternal moment. The imagery expands, waves of light bending through gravitational fields, colliding galaxies shimmering like sparks, auroras flowing through Earth's atmosphere like liquid silk. The narration grows reverent. Light connects everything that has ever been. It is the bloodstream of the cosmos, flowing through every atom, every consciousness, every dream. If the fifth dimension exists, it might be woven into the very behavior of light. Maybe what we call seeing is an act of limited translation, a decoding of higher dimensional information into three-dimensional perception. Our eyes can only see a sliver of the spectrum. We call the rest invisible, but the universe does not share our blindness. Radio waves, microwaves, X-rays, they all move through us, through walls, through planets, undetected by our senses. To us they are ghosts. To the cosmos they are the language of existence. The narrator pauses. We think of light as illumination, but perhaps it is also concealment. Every beam that reveals one thing hides another. What we see blinds us to what lies beyond the visible. The light that guides us may also be the curtain that separates us from the fifth dimension itself. A final image, a lone beam of sunlight piercing through the dust of an ancient cathedral, scattering into infinite points of color. Each speck shimmers, alive, vibrating. The voice lowers to a whisper. Every photon that touches your eye has traveled through the unknown to reach you. It has crossed the emptiness between worlds, carrying a message that no language can contain. Light is not just energy, it is memory. The memory of the fifth dimension. The music swells, echoing like a heartbeat of the universe. The screen fades to black. For a long moment there is silence. Then, faintly, the sound of a pulse. A flicker. A whisper. The universe bends. Not metaphorically, not poetically, but literally. Space and time, the two great fabrics of existence, are not rigid frames but supple threads woven together, curving under the weight of matter and energy. And at the heart of this discovery stood a man who dared to imagine that reality was not what it seemed. Albert Einstein. His equations didn't just describe gravity, they revealed a hidden architecture of the cosmos, a geometry that hinted at unseen corridors, perhaps even doors, leading beyond the known dimensions. Picture a chalkboard in a dimly lit study in 1915. The air thick with smoke, papers scattered, ink-stained notes filled with impossible symbols. Einstein leans over his work, his hair wild, his eyes feverish, sketching the curvature of spacetime with trembling hands. The numbers align, the logic crystallizes, and suddenly the universe is no longer flat. It ripples. Every star, every planet, every atom tugs on the fabric of existence, bending it in response. Gravity, he realizes, is not a force at all. It is the shape of reality itself. The narration draws us in, quiet but intense. What Einstein uncovered, it says, was not just a theory. It was a revelation. In his equations, spacetime could fold, twist, or stretch under the right conditions. And in certain configurations, solutions later found by others, these folds could connect distant regions of the universe. A bridge through space and time. A wormhole. The word itself would not appear until decades later, but its ghost was already written in Einstein's mathematics. The visuals shift to a vast cosmic landscape. Stars stretch into ribbons of light as the camera dives toward the event horizon of a black hole. The narration continues, low and hypnotic. Imagine space not as emptiness but as fabric, elastic, continuous, alive. Now imagine pulling two distant points together until they touch. That is the fifth dimension whispering through Einstein's geometry. A shortcut through existence, a door hidden in plain sight. The notion that space could fold was revolutionary, almost blasphemous to the rigid Newtonian worldview that had dominated for centuries. To Newton, the universe was a clock, precise, predictable, absolute. To Einstein, it was a symphony. Time itself could speed up or slow down depending on where you stood, how fast you moved, or how massive your surroundings were. Every observer carried their own clock, their own truth. Reality became relative. But relativity had side effects, strange, beautiful, terrifying ones. If gravity could bend spacetime, then under extreme conditions, near black holes for instance, it might bend so sharply that it folded over itself. In that fold, the boundaries between dimensions blurred. A traveler falling into such a curvature might not just cross space, but pierce the very fabric of existence, stepping into a realm where time no longer flows as we know it. Some physicists began to wonder, was Einstein's curved spacetime a four-dimensional mask hiding something deeper, a fifth dimension pressing from behind? Cut to a visual, light streaks bending around invisible wells, stars spinning into spirals. The narrator's tone becomes hushed, reverent. If spacetime can bend, then perhaps it can open. If gravity can stretch, perhaps it can tear. Somewhere in the mathematics of relativity, there may be a hidden door, a path not through space but through dimension itself. In 1935, Einstein and his collaborator Nathan Rosen discovered that his equations allowed for bridges between distant points in spacetime. These theoretical pathways, Einstein-Rosen bridges, could, in theory, connect two universes or two regions of one. Later, physicist John Wheeler would give them their haunting name, wormholes. They were the ultimate expression of Einstein's geometry, shortcuts through existence, tunnels where space and time themselves lost meaning. But what would it feel like to cross one? The documentary's imagery becomes surreal. The viewer drifts through a cosmic tunnel, colors shifting from blue to violet to pure white, as though moving through the skin of reality itself. The narration murmurs, to us it would look like vanishing. To a higher dimensional observer, it would look like a simple step sideways. Here lies the haunting implication. Wormholes are not just science fiction fantasies, but mathematically consistent consequences of Einstein's theory. Yet they demand something beyond ordinary physics to stay open. Exotic matter, negative energy, impossible conditions. To hold a door between worlds ajar, one must violate the known laws of the universe. The equations tease us with possibility, but reality for now resists. Still, whispers of the fifth dimension linger in the background. When we describe gravity bending space, what are we really describing? A curvature in our familiar four-dimensional spacetime, or a shadow cast by an unseen dimension tugging at the edges of ours? Some scientists argue that gravity's weakness compared to other forces, its strange dilution across the cosmos, may be because it leaks into extra dimensions. If so, Einstein's curved fabric is not the whole tapestry. It's only one layer of a multi-dimensional weave. The narration deepens, contemplative. Perhaps Einstein's door has always been there. Not a portal in space, but in perception. Every time we measure gravity, we are feeling the pull of another world. Every orbit, every falling apple, is the universe reaching across dimensions. A slow montage unfolds, apple trees swaying, planets spinning, galaxies colliding. The same curve repeated at every scale. The same invisible hand guiding motion, shaping light. Einstein had uncovered not just gravity's secret, but the fingerprint of something greater. The equations that describe planets also describe possibility itself, the bending of what we call real. As we linger in that cosmic imagery, the narrator returns. Einstein never spoke of other dimensions in mystical terms. He sought unity, not mystery. But the more we understand his mathematics, the more they point beyond themselves. Wormholes, singularities, curvatures so sharp that even light cannot escape. Each solution feels like a clue, a map drawn by the universe to something higher. Then comes the paradox. If a wormhole connects two regions of spacetime, could one end exist in our dimension and the other beyond? Could the fifth dimension be the silent endpoint of every gravitational path, the unseen side of every black hole? Some physicists speculate that the singularity at a black hole's core is not destruction, but transition. A crossing point. A dimensional gate. The ghosts of the fifth dimension might not haunt us. They might be what's left when something or someone crosses over. The music swells again, strings rising over a deep, pulsing rhythm that feels like the heartbeat of space itself. Einstein's hidden door, the narrator says, may not be metaphor. It may be literal. The equations never lie, they only whisper truths we're not yet ready to hear. A final image, Einstein, old now, walking along the riverbank at dusk. His coat flutters in the wind, his mind heavy with unsolved mysteries. He gazes up at the sky, the stars flickering like windows half open. He once said, "The most incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it is comprehensible." But perhaps he was wrong. Perhaps comprehension itself is the limit, the wall between the fourth and the fifth. The camera pans slowly upward into the night. The stars stretch, twist, and curve into spirals of light. Space folds upon itself like silk. And somewhere in that silent curvature, a door glimmers, briefly, faintly, before vanishing again. The voice returns, barely audible now, fading into the hum of the cosmos. We are not outside the door. We are the door. It was 1919, and the world had barely begun to recover from war. Across Europe, cities were rebuilding, minds were awakening, and science, after centuries of careful progress, was suddenly bursting into revolution. Einstein's theory of relativity had redrawn the map of reality itself, but even as his curved spacetime captured imaginations, another question began to stir. Could there be more? Could the universe hide deeper layers that even Einstein had not yet seen? In a quiet study in Germany, a mathematician named Theodor Kaluza sat staring at Einstein's field equations. To most, they were already impossibly complex. A web of tensors describing how matter tells space how to curve, and space tells matter how to move. But Kaluza saw something strange, something that didn't fit. He noticed that if one added just one more dimension, an unseen fifth coordinate, the mathematics began to change. Equations that once described gravity began to produce something else, something astonishing: electromagnetism. The narration builds slowly, the voice steady with awe. Kaluza realized that by extending Einstein's four-dimensional spacetime to 5, he could unify two of nature's fundamental forces, the pull of gravity and the invisible dance of electricity and magnetism. One geometry, two worlds, one equation to rule them both. Visuals sweep through early 20th century laboratories, sparking Tesla coils, ink-stained notes, static crackling between metal spheres. The world was beginning to understand the invisible. Electricity had powered entire cities, magnetism guided compasses across oceans, and now, through Kaluza's mathematics, it seemed all of it might be connected to the curvature of higher dimensional space. The universe, it seemed, might not just be vast, it might be folded. Kaluza's equations were elegant, almost too elegant. When he shared them with Einstein, the great physicist was intrigued but cautious. The idea was beautiful, but invisible beauty was dangerous in science. If a fifth dimension existed, why had no one ever seen it? The question lingered, a quiet challenge that would echo across decades. Einstein supported Kaluza's work but hesitated to publish it immediately. The world, he thought, might not be ready for such an audacious leap. A few years later, another mind would take Kaluza's vision and give it new life. Oskar Klein, a Swedish physicist, brought quantum theory into the mix. He proposed something radical. Perhaps the fifth dimension wasn't large and infinite like the ones we know, but small, so small that it curled in on itself, hidden within every point in space. Like a loop too tiny for any microscope to see, it would exist everywhere and nowhere, influencing the universe without revealing itself. The camera visualizes Klein's idea, a vast three-dimensional landscape, then a slow zoom into a single point of space, revealing it to be a tunnel, a curled circle looping endlessly within itself. The narrator whispers, "What if every atom, every grain of dust, every heartbeat contains an entire hidden dimension folded within it?" This was the birth of what would later be known as Kaluza-Klein theory, the first great union of relativity and quantum mechanics, gravity and electromagnetism. It was not just mathematics, it was a glimpse of something transcendent. The fifth dimension was no longer fantasy. It was geometry. But science is not gentle with dreamers. The theory struggled for decades. No one could prove the existence of the tiny curled dimension. No experiment could detect it. To many, Kaluza and Klein's ideas seemed like poetic speculation, beautiful, yes, but unprovable. Still, their equations refused to die. They lingered, waiting for the right moment, the right mind to resurrect them. The tone deepens, cinematic and reflective. Sometimes, truth hides not because it is small, but because we are not yet large enough to see it. The narrative shifts to modern imagery, particle accelerators, shimmering fields of energy, scientists staring at screens filled with data. As physics advanced through the 20th century, other forces joined the puzzle. The strong and weak nuclear interactions governing the world within atoms. Physicists dreamed of a theory of everything, one framework that could describe all the forces of nature in a single elegant geometry. And whenever they tried, Kaluza and Klein's ghost returned. The equations kept whispering, "Add more dimensions." It was as if the universe itself was telling us that what we perceive is only the surface. That the four-dimensional world, three of space, one of time, is merely a projection of something higher. The fifth dimension became more than a number. It became a metaphor for unity, the hidden thread weaving together the fabric of existence. The visuals now shift to a grand, cinematic panorama of the cosmos. Galaxies swirling in slow motion, gravity bending light into arcs of gold. In Kaluza's vision, the voice says, "Light itself is a vibration through the fifth dimension. Every electromagnetic wave, every photon, every glimmer you see is the echo of higher geometry." When we look at a beam of light, we are not just seeing energy, we are seeing the fifth dimension speaking in color. The idea electrifies the mind. What if our senses, limited to three spatial dimensions, interpret this hidden realm as light, energy, or motion? What if everything that vibrates, every sound, every electromagnetic frequency, is a shadow of higher dimensional ripples? In this view, the fifth dimension is not a distant realm, it's right here, folded into every atom, every thought, every breath. The music grows darker now. The narrator continues, "But to glimpse the fifth dimension is to face a paradox. If it truly exists, it would explain everything. Yet to find it, we must look beyond everything we know." We move through history, Einstein's death, the rise of quantum mechanics, the fragmentation of physics into separate disciplines. For decades, the fifth dimension drifted like a forgotten dream, overshadowed by particle physics and cosmology. But dreams never truly die. In the 1970s, as scientists began to develop string theory, Kaluza and Klein's ideas re-emerged, stronger than ever. String theory required not just one hidden dimension, but several. The fifth, it turned out, was only the beginning. The narrator's tone turns almost reverent. It is as if Kaluza and Klein had opened the first door in a vast corridor of unseen worlds. They could not walk beyond it, but they saw the light spilling through. The camera drifts across chalkboards filled with equations, then zooms into a single line, Rmu equals 0, Einstein's field equation now expanded into a new five-dimensional form. From the chalk dust emerges a luminous geometric grid, rotating, bending, shimmering into a new shape, a torus, a curled dimension looping endlessly in silence. The image feels alive, breathing. The narration lowers to a whisper. If gravity is the bending of space and electromagnetism the vibration of fields, then the fifth dimension is their meeting point, the silent bridge between matter and energy, form and motion, the visible and the invisible. But there is also melancholy here. Kaluza died before seeing his theory vindicated. Klein lived long enough to watch science drift away from his ideas. Yet today their ghosts linger in every unification attempt, every whisper of quantum gravity, every vision of multiverses and brains. Their dream, that all forces are facets of one hidden structure, remains one of the most poetic ideas in human thought. As the section nears its end, the visuals fade to black, leaving only the faint hum of unseen vibration. The narrator concludes, Kaluza and Klein believed the fifth dimension was real but hidden, curled too tightly for human eyes. But maybe it is not small at all. Maybe it is we who are small. Perhaps the fifth dimension has always been here, surrounding us, shaping us, and we are simply too flat to notice its depth. Pause. Then, softly, every equation is a key, every mystery a lock. Somewhere in the mathematics of existence, the door still waits to be opened. The music fades, quiet, distant, endless. The 20th century had opened a door to the invisible, but by the time the century neared its end, that door had become a labyrinth. Physicists were drowning in equations, chasing patterns that shimmered and vanished like mirages. Gravity was elegant but incomplete. Quantum mechanics was powerful but fragmented. Every attempt to unify them ended in chaos, numbers exploding into infinity, logic breaking apart. Yet somewhere in that chaos, a whisper persisted. Perhaps the answer did not lie in what we could see but in what we could not. Perhaps the key was hidden in extra dimensions. In the dim glow of a chalk-dusted lecture hall in the 1970s, a new generation of physicists began sketching strange ideas on blackboards. They drew not particles but strings, tiny vibrating filaments of energy that could explain everything if only their mathematics held true. Each vibration represented a particle, each frequency a force, each note a fundamental constant. The universe was not made of matter, they said, but of music. The strings played in a cosmic symphony whose melody shaped existence itself. But there was a catch. The equations only worked if there were more than 4 dimensions. In fact, they demanded 10. To make sense of the universe, the theory required that 6 of those dimensions be hidden, curled so tightly that they were invisible to us. The fifth dimension was no longer an abstract idea, it was the first thread in a hidden tapestry that stretched far beyond imagination. The narration deepens, rhythmic and deliberate. What Kaluza and Klein saw as a whisper, string theory declared as a chorus. The fifth dimension was not fantasy. It was structure, the scaffolding of the universe itself. Visuals bloom across the screen, luminous strings vibrating against a dark cosmic backdrop, waves of color rippling across a field of light. Each movement distorts space, creating bursts of energy, echoes of particles, the flicker of creation. The narrator continues, these strings do not exist in our world of three-dimensional space. Their true dance unfolds in dimensions we cannot see, dimensions that touch ours like ghosts pressing against glass. And so begins the paradox of modern physics. The more beautiful the mathematics, the less visible the truth. Scientists built vast colliders, the largest machines in human history, to hunt for signs of these hidden dimensions. They smashed particles together at unimaginable speeds, hoping to glimpse the extra-dimensional fingerprints, tiny deviations, missing energy, strange patterns in the data. The results were whispers, not proofs. The equations promised elegance, but reality remained silent. The tone shifts from wonder to tension. If the fifth dimension is real, the voice asks, why can we not see it? Why does it hide so perfectly? Some theorists propose that the fifth dimension is compactified, folded upon itself in a space smaller than a proton. Others believed it might be vast but inaccessible, separated by barriers of energy we cannot yet cross. The idea gave rise to a haunting metaphor, that our universe is like a membrane, a brain, floating in a higher dimensional ocean. We move, breathe, and live on this thin surface, unaware of the infinite depth surrounding us. The forces we know, light, magnetism, nuclear energy, are trapped here with us. But gravity, the weakest of all forces, seeps outward, leaking into the fifth dimension like mist escaping through cracks in the wall. The camera drifts through imagery of parallel planes of shimmering light, suspended like sheets in a void. Between them, faint currents of energy ripple, a visual metaphor for gravity leaking between worlds. Maybe gravity feels weak not because it is small, the narrator says, but because most of it isn't here. It lives elsewhere, in the dimension we cannot touch. The idea is both terrifying and beautiful. It suggests that our universe may not be alone, but part of a vast stack of realities, each one floating beside the next in the dark sea of higher dimensional space. The fifth dimension could be the thin veil separating us from them, the whisper between universes. What we call dark matter or dark energy might be nothing more than the gravitational pull of other worlds brushing against ours. The music grows tense, an undercurrent of mystery and unease. The narrator continues, every experiment, every equation points to something just out of reach. A shadow in the data, a ghost in the geometry. The fifth dimension haunts the mathematics of physics like an unfinished sentence. We see physicists at blackboards, eyes red from sleepless nights, chalk tracing loops and curves that look more like art than arithmetic. For every solution they find, another question emerges. The deeper they dig, the more they sense that they are chasing something intelligent, something purposeful, even elegant. Yet the universe gives nothing away easily. Then comes the philosophical turn. The fifth dimension, the voice murmurs, may not just be a place. It may be the interface between being and possibility, the frontier where what exists meets what could exist. In this interpretation, every potential state of reality, every quantum possibility, is not destroyed when unobserved but stored, layered across dimensions. The fifth dimension becomes the archive of all paths not taken, the infinite branching of existence that gives rise to the illusion of choice, time, and causality. The visuals transform into a hypnotic cascade of branching light, each split representing a decision, a timeline, a new reality unfolding. The narrator continues, to move through the fifth dimension is not to travel through space, but through possibility. It is the realm where fate and freedom merge. Yet the beauty carries a shadow. If infinite realities exist, then every version of us does too. Every thought, every mistake, every triumph, repeated endlessly in the unseen. The fifth dimension becomes not only the bridge between physics and philosophy, but between creation and meaning. What does it mean to live in one layer of infinity? To know that infinite others walk beside us, unseen, unknowing? The tone darkens further, the voice quiet now, intimate. Perhaps this is why the fifth dimension hides. Not because it cannot be found, but because we could not bear to see it. To glimpse it fully would be to confront ourselves multiplied without end. The narrative pivots once more toward science. In the 1990s, new formulations like M-theory expanded string theory's landscape. Physicists like Edward Witten proposed that the universe may actually contain 11 dimensions, with the fifth acting as a fundamental bridge, a connective tissue between the tangible and the theoretical. Within this framework, every particle, every force, every vibration arises from the geometry of these hidden spaces. The universe, in all its complexity, might simply be the shadow cast by higher dimensional perfection. The music softens, strings swelling as the camera glides through vast cosmic vistas. If that is true, the narrator says, then what we call laws of physics are merely the rules of our layer, localized truths shaped by the geometry of the fifth dimension. The scene transitions to the Large Hadron Collider, a ring of light buried beneath the Earth. The narrator continues, we are smashing matter together to look for ghosts in the data, but what if the fifth dimension is not in the debris of collisions, but in the silence between them? What if it hides not in what we destroy but in what we overlook? Slowly the imagery fades to black, leaving only a single white line curving gently in space. The fifth dimension is not an invention, the voice whispers. It is an inevitability. Every equation that seeks truth bends toward it. Every mystery points its way. And yet, the closer we come, the more it slips away as if guarding a secret too vast for understanding. The final moments are hushed. A scientist stands before a chalkboard, eyes closed, lost in thought. Around them, the equations begin to glow faintly, lines of light forming shapes that seem alive. The fifth dimension flickers in their mind, not as a place but as a feeling, a pulse beneath reality's skin. The voice concludes, gentle and haunting. The fifth dimension is the ghost in the equation, the unseen symmetry that binds everything together. We do not need to find it. We are already inside it. The music fades to silence. The chalkboard light dims. The whisper remains. For centuries, humans have looked to the sky and seen only distance. Stars as points of light, planets as stones adrift, galaxies as silent spirals of flame. But what if the sky isn't far away at all? What if the space between those stars, between everything we know, isn't emptiness but something else? Something structured, folded, layered beyond comprehension. In this section, the lens turns from equations to imagination, from the laboratory to the edge of perception, where the fifth dimension stops being theory and starts to feel real. The scene opens with a quiet hum. A slow aerial shot drifts over mountain ranges at dawn, mist coiling through valleys like smoke. The narrator's voice cuts through the silence. We live inside a universe of shadows. Every atom, every beam of light, every breath we take, each one may be a projection from a deeper realm. The fifth dimension is not beyond us. It is beneath everything we see. The idea seems impossible, yet its logic runs deep. Imagine, the narrator explains, a two-dimensional creature living on a flat sheet of paper. It knows only length and width, it cannot conceive of height. When a sphere passes through its world, all it perceives is a circle that grows and shrinks, a ghostly outline of a shape it cannot understand. To the flat creature, the sphere seems supernatural, beyond comprehension. And yet, to us, it is simple. So what are we? The narrator asks. Are we the flat creatures, watching higher dimensional forms pass through our world and mistaking them for miracles? Cinematic visuals take over, hands passing through rippling light, shapes appearing and disappearing in thin air, a human shadow stretching across a glowing grid. The narrator continues, if beings of higher dimension exist, their presence would not be seen as bodies, but as shifting patterns, distortions in energy, in gravity, in thought. We would not recognize them as entities but as phenomena. The universe might already be full of them. The tone now turns to the mystical but grounded in physics. The narrator draws a connection between gravitational anomalies, small deviations in how matter moves through space, and the idea of higher dimensional interference. Every time we measure gravity, we find it slightly weaker than expected, as if it were leaking away. What if that leakage is not loss but connection? What if it is the handshake between our world and the fifth dimension? Images of galaxies twisting under unseen forces fill the screen, gravitational lensing, dark matter maps, the warped arcs of light bending through cosmic space. The music swells. Dark matter, the voice says, makes up most of the universe. We cannot see it, touch it, or measure it directly. Yet it shapes everything. Perhaps dark matter is not matter at all, but the shadow of higher dimensional structures pressing into our reality. The ghosts of the fifth dimension, invisible but omnipresent. The pacing slows. The visuals shift from galaxies to neurons, from cosmic webs to the delicate wiring of the human brain. The narrator lowers their voice, look closely, and the universe and the mind begin to mirror each other. The cosmic web of galaxies looks almost identical to the neural network of a human mind. What if that similarity is not coincidence but reflection? What if consciousness itself is a projection through the fifth dimension, a shadow of awareness from beyond? We see neurons firing, thoughts flickering as patterns of light. Perhaps our thoughts are not generated but tuned, resonances caught from the higher dimensional field that underlies existence. The fifth dimension could be the substrate of both matter and mind. The camera pans across silent laboratories, particle detectors, telescopes scanning the horizon. The world of science feels cold, mechanical, yet beneath it hums something ancient. Throughout history, the voice says, humanity has spoken of spirits, souls, and invisible presences. Perhaps those were not fantasies, but glimpses of what lies beyond four-dimensional space. Not supernatural but ultranatural. The physics of dimensions our senses were never built to perceive. The tone shifts again, contrast framing from mystery to awe. The narrator continues, we are wired for 3 dimensions. Everything we touch, every movement we make, every object we know is defined within that limitation. But the universe is under no obligation to fit our senses. The fifth dimension could be all around us, pressing inward, unseen, like the deep ocean pressing against the glass of a submarine. We feel its pressure, its distortion, but never its face. Visuals begin to intercut between human lives and cosmic imagery. Someone lighting a candle, a supernova erupting, a child touching water, a galaxy reflecting in their eyes. The narration builds rhythm. If higher dimensions exist, then every motion in our world, every wave, every echo, every heartbeat, is the surface effect of deeper vibrations. We are instruments resonating with invisible strings. A new metaphor begins. Imagine standing on a frozen lake. Beneath the ice, the water moves, alive and unseen. You hear its creaks and whispers but never glimpse its flow. That is the fifth dimension, moving beneath the frozen surface of spacetime. We live upon the ice, mistaking the stillness for truth. As the section deepens, the tone grows philosophical. Every great discovery in human history has begun as heresy. The earth was once the center of the universe. The atom was once indivisible. Light was once a particle, then a wave, then both. Now, reality itself trembles under question. What if the fifth dimension is not just an extension of space, but the architecture of meaning, the framework in which consciousness and physics are two faces of the same coin? The screen fills with overlapping images, fractals, branching trees, waves breaking against rocks, the pulse of stars. We find the same patterns repeated across scales, from atoms to galaxies, from neurons to storms. The same geometry, the same rhythm. What if that symmetry is the fingerprint of the fifth dimension? The music shifts, slow, haunting, almost sacred. The narrator whispers, maybe the fifth dimension is not far away at all. Maybe it is the distance between perception and reality. Every insight, every moment of intuition, every dream that feels more real than waking. These could be moments when our consciousness brushes against it, when we momentarily see through the veil. The pacing slows to a meditative silence. The camera glides through empty hallways, mirrors reflecting mirrors. The narrator says, if this is true, then the human mind is both a receiver and a barrier. We are tuned to 3 dimensions for survival, not truth. The fifth dimension has always been there, waiting, whispering through mathematics, through dreams, through moments of stillness. Then comes the turn to emotion, a contrast from logic to wonder. When you stand beneath the night sky, the voice says softly, and feel that impossible sense of scale, that quiet awareness of something beyond comprehension, you are not just sensing distance, you are sensing depth. Dimensional depth. The pull of something vast, unseen, eternal. The fifth dimension is not out there. It is within the feeling itself. The visuals dissolve into a montage, stars collapsing into black holes, oceans moving under moonlight, a single drop of water falling into stillness. In every drop of water, the narrator says, the fifth dimension folds. In every photon, every breath, every heartbeat. It is the silent structure behind all experience. The ghost not of death, but of infinity. The music swells to a quiet crescendo, then fades into near silence. The camera moves through a narrow tunnel of light, emerging into a vast, glowing expanse, a visual metaphor for revelation. The narrator concludes, to glimpse the fifth dimension is not to leave the world, but to see it as it truly is, layered, infinite, alive. We are not separate from it. We are its shadows, learning to recognize our own outlines. A long pause follows. Then the faintest whisper, perhaps ghosts are not the dead. Perhaps they are us, seen from the fifth dimension. The screen fades to black. The hum returns. The universe holds its breath. In the quiet corridors of scientific history, there is a strange intersection where the measurable and the mystical almost touch. It is a place where mathematics trembles on the edge of revelation, where physicists speak in equations but dream in symbols. The search for the fifth dimension began as a mathematical curiosity, but it has slowly grown into something else, a quest that borders on the spiritual. The more deeply scientists stare into the geometry of reality, the more it begins to look like a mirror. The scene opens on a darkened planetarium. A slow rotation of the stars fills the dome, their light cascading like memories across the ceiling. The narrator's voice begins softly. For thousands of years, humanity has asked one question again and again. What is beyond? Beyond the stars, beyond time, beyond death. The fifth dimension is not a new question. It is an old longing wearing new language. Visuals flow seamlessly from the cosmic to the human. Ancient astronomers tracing constellations in the sand, monks meditating in candlelight, philosophers writing by moonlight. The narrator continues, long before physics there was intuition. Mystics and mathematicians have always spoken of hidden worlds, planes of reality layered over one another like the pages of a book. What we now call dimensions, they called heavens, realms, or spheres of existence. The music swells faintly, like the sound of air vibrating in an empty cathedral. In the ancient Hindu Vedas, the cosmos was described as a vast structure of unseen layers, each more subtle and luminous than the last. In the Hermetic traditions of Egypt, reality was said to have 7 planes, with the physical world merely the lowest. The Kabbalistic tree of life mapped the ascent of consciousness through 10 spheres, each a bridge to higher understanding. These were not myths of chaos, they were blueprints of dimensional ascent, drawn in the only language those cultures knew. A pause, then the tone turns reflective. When Kaluza added the fifth dimension to Einstein's equations, he thought he was doing mathematics. But perhaps, unknowingly, he was rediscovering an ancient memory, a truth that had been spoken for centuries in metaphors of light and form. Cinematic imagery fills the screen, equations glowing like constellations superimposed over the shapes of temples, mandalas and fractals. Mathematics and mysticism, the narrator says, are not enemies. They are two languages describing the same ineffable structure, the geometry of existence itself. The film now pivots to modern science, bridging logic and wonder. In quantum physics, the narrator explains, particles can exist in multiple states at once, entangled across distances no signal could traverse. They behave as though connected through an invisible channel outside of space and time. Physicists call it non-locality. But what if it is simply the physics of higher dimensions, the threads that connect every point in our reality through the fifth dimension? The visuals shift to an elegant diagram, points of light connected by unseen lines, shimmering through a dark void. From this perspective, the voice continues, the fifth dimension is not distance but immediacy. Everything that has ever existed, everything that will exist coexists there, layered like notes in a chord. We move through time one note at a time, but the full harmony already exists. The fifth dimension is the music sheet, the structure that holds every melody of existence. The music grows warmer now, almost hopeful. If we could perceive it directly, the narrator says, we would not see space but connection. Not matter but pattern. Every thought, every life, every death, every moment, all are harmonics of the same eternal vibration. This section now shifts tone, bringing the audience closer to the emotional core. The narrator's voice softens. But what happens when a human being glimpses this truth, not through theory but through experience? The visuals turn surreal, dreamlike images of people describing near-death experiences, lucid dreams, moments of timeless awareness. Throughout history, the narrator says, those who have come close to death describe a strange sensation, the collapse of time, the expansion of perspective, the sense of being everywhere at once. Perhaps these are not hallucinations. Perhaps they are momentary awakenings into higher dimensional consciousness, where time itself unfolds all at once. Cinematic transition. Slow heartbeat fades into cosmic rhythm. The camera pulls back from a human eye until it becomes a galaxy swirling in the dark. When consciousness slips the boundaries of the body, the voice continues, it may not leave reality, it may simply move through it into the dimensional depth that was always there. The scene cuts to neural scans glowing in rhythm with meditative brainwaves. The narrator says, recent neuroscience has shown that the human brain may operate at multiple frequencies simultaneously, each interacting like waves of sound. These rhythms could be harmonic resonances between dimensions, the brain as a receiver, consciousness as a signal tuned into the fifth-dimensional field. We now enter contrast framing, the rational and the poetic colliding. Skeptics argue that such ideas are speculation, the narrator admits. They say that science must not cross into metaphysics. But perhaps the boundary itself is artificial. Every equation begins as imagination. Every discovery was once a myth. The visuals slow. A single candle burns against an infinite mirror. When Galileo lifted his telescope, he wasn't inventing a new sky. He was revealing what had always been there. The fifth dimension may be the same, an ancient truth waiting for a new lens. The narrative deepens again, merging philosophy and physics. In modern cosmology, we know that the universe is expanding but not into anything. It is space itself that grows. The fifth dimension may be the hidden parameter behind that growth. The direction not of distance but of possibility. Every moment that becomes real, every future that collapses into the present, may be an unfolding along the fifth axis. Images of the Big Bang flash across the screen, a blinding explosion of light blooming outward into form. What we call creation, the voice says, may simply be a projection through dimensions. The universe is not expanding into space, it is unfolding through it, revealing layers of geometry already embedded in the fifth dimension. Then comes the emotional descent, the pullback to human scale. We often think of the fifth dimension as far away, abstract, unreachable. But what if it is the space within us, the unmeasured distance between awareness and existence? We see close-ups, a tear rolling down a cheek, a hand reaching toward another, a child laughing at the ocean. Every emotion, every act of love, every moment of awareness is a bending of reality, a ripple in the unseen geometry. Perhaps the human heart is the smallest mirror of the fifth dimension. The music softens again, piano and low strings, steady and reflective. The narrator says, there is a symmetry in everything, the orbit of planets, the pulse of stars, the rhythm of breath. Every symmetry points to a hidden structure, and all structures point upward, toward dimensions beyond sight. The fifth is only the first veil to lift. Then, with quiet conviction, maybe that is why ancient wisdom and modern science are beginning to speak the same language again. Both are reaching toward the same truth, that reality is not made of things but of relationships, connections, vibrations, geometry alive. The imagery turns to light moving through glass, refracting into rainbows. To see a rainbow, the narrator says, you need both sunlight and tears. The fifth dimension may be the same, a bridge between illumination and experience, physics and feeling, matter and meaning. The camera glides into a final shot, a human silhouette standing in a vast field of stars. Slowly, the stars align, forming patterns that resemble equations, then dissolve back into light. The fifth dimension is not only a structure of space, the voice concludes, it is the architecture of awareness. The more deeply we look into the universe, the more it begins to look back. What we call the unknown may simply be ourselves, reflected through higher geometry. A long silence. The stars fade, leaving only a faint pulse of light, rhythmic and eternal. Perhaps the fifth dimension is not a place we will discover, but a state we will remember. In the stillness of deep space, beyond the glow of galaxies and the hum of starlight, there lies a question that has haunted physicists for generations. If the fifth dimension is real, where does it hide? The search for it has driven the construction of the largest machines ever built by human hands, instruments so sensitive they can detect ripples in spacetime itself. Yet, despite the precision, despite the brilliance, the fifth dimension remains unseen, an absence that feels deliberate, almost intelligent. The film opens on a wide shot of the Large Hadron Collider buried beneath the soil of Switzerland, a vast ring of magnets glowing with electric blue light. The narrator's voice begins in a tone of quiet wonder. We have built machines that can recreate the first seconds after the birth of the universe. We collide protons at nearly the speed of light, peeling apart matter in search of its foundation. But every time we reach the edge of discovery, something slips through our fingers. The camera pans across data screens filled with cascading patterns, waveforms, peaks, and troughs that flicker like coded messages. Physicists expected the fifth dimension to reveal itself through distortions in gravity, through missing energy, through patterns we could trace. But instead, the deeper we look, the more the universe behaves like a magician. It shows us the trick but not the mechanism. The music builds slowly, a heartbeat rhythm underscoring the narration. It is almost as if the fifth dimension doesn't want to be seen but felt. Its fingerprints are not in what we detect but in what we can't. We shift to gravitational wave observatories, LIGO, Virgo, massive lasers stretching across kilometers of land, detecting vibrations in spacetime from distant cosmic collisions. The narrator continues, these machines listen to the universe. They hear black holes collide, neutron stars merge, galaxies sing in frequencies we cannot comprehend. Each ripple that reaches us is a message from another time. But what if these ripples are not just echoes of gravity? What if they are the language of the fifth dimension translated into sound? The visuals shift into slow-motion imagery of light waves moving through darkness. When two black holes merge, they warp spacetime so violently that the universe itself rings. But what if the vibration travels through more than just space? What if part of it slips into a higher dimension, like a note played partly beyond our range of hearing? The tone becomes almost reverent, each word weighed carefully. Every silence in our measurements may be a doorway. Every anomaly, a shadow of something greater. The narration pivots to contrast, the rational and the philosophical. Science demands proof, the narrator says, but the fifth dimension may never reveal itself in the ways we expect. To find it, we may need to expand not our instruments, but our definition of evidence. A series of images fills the screen, ancient observatories, monks meditating beneath the stars, mathematicians scribbling equations under lamplight. Every age has its mysteries. The ancients saw the divine in the heavens, we see geometry. But perhaps both are true. Perhaps the fifth dimension is what bridges belief and measurement. The pacing slows. Even Einstein, the man who reshaped our view of reality, once said that imagination is more important than knowledge. He sensed that intuition, what he called the feeling for the order behind the appearance, was the real path to understanding. The scene changes to a human scale, a physicist sitting alone in a dark lab, staring at a screen, equations glowing in the reflection of their eyes. Every scientist who searches for hidden dimensions is chasing not just data but wonder. They are drawn by the same force that drives poets, mystics, and dreamers, the hunger to touch what cannot be touched. The narrator's voice drops to a whisper. And maybe that is what the fifth dimension demands, not discovery but recognition. The music shifts again, strings rising softly as the visuals turn surreal. The camera moves through a swirl of galaxies that morph into human eyes, into fingerprints, into neural networks. Patterns repeat, the narrator says. From the structure of galaxies to the wiring of the brain, from the spin of atoms to the rhythm of planets. The same geometry, the same resonance. It is as though the universe keeps drawing the same design over and over across every scale. Pause. Then the question, why? The screen fills with overlapping spirals, Fibonacci patterns, golden ratios. Every law of nature follows symmetry. Every symmetry hints at something deeper. The fifth dimension may be the source of that symmetry, the hidden template that the universe uses to shape itself. The narration becomes more cinematic, drawing emotion from precision. We think of the universe as matter and energy, but perhaps it is architecture, an intricate lattice of invisible connections. Gravity, electromagnetism, the quantum field, they are not separate forces, but echoes of the same higher dimensional structure. The film now weaves in contrast framing, science versus perception. We live as flat beings within a vast structure, mistaking projections for substance. We name them atoms, particles, waves. But in truth, we may be tracing the shadows of five-dimensional shapes cast upon the four-dimensional surface we call spacetime. Visuals show shadows morphing into forms, cubes unfolding into tesseracts, lines expanding into surfaces. Just as a shadow loses information about the object that casts it, our physics may describe only the faintest outline of the full reality. The fifth dimension could hold the missing information, the parts of the universe we cannot yet compute or imagine. The music slows to a low pulse. In quantum mechanics, there is a mystery called the wave function, an invisible mathematical field that contains all possible states of a particle. When observed, it collapses into one reality. Some physicists now believe this collapse is not random, but a movement through higher dimensional space, a crossing into the fifth dimension where possibility becomes actuality. The visuals depict overlapping realities, like transparent films sliding into alignment. Every choice, every observation, every event could be the act of the universe folding through its own higher geometry. Time doesn't flow, it unfurls. Then a soft shift back to human emotion. If this is true, the narrator says, then every moment of your life, every decision, every chance, exists somewhere within that dimension. The fifth dimension may not only shape the universe, it may shape you. Every possible version of you, woven into an unseen fabric that connects all outcomes. The camera now drifts through memories, childhood laughter, lovers' faces, quiet rooms. The narration continues, perhaps déjà vu, intuition, or sudden flashes of understanding are not illusions, but brief moments of alignment, when our consciousness brushes against its higher dimensional reflection. The tone deepens, awe mixing with unease. If so, then the universe is not a machine, it is a mind. And the fifth dimension is the space where thought becomes form. The music swells, then fades to near silence. We build instruments to measure what we can see, but perhaps the next revolution in physics will come not from technology but from awareness. The fifth dimension may not be waiting for us to find it, it may be waiting for us to remember it. The final images return to the cosmos, a slow pan across galaxies stretching into infinity. When you look up at the night sky, the narrator says, you are looking not outward but inward, across the folds of a dimension that includes you. The light of distant stars travels not only through space, but through memory, through possibility, through the invisible geometry that binds everything together. The final line lands like a whisper. We are not on the edge of discovery. We are already inside the answer, wrapped within the fifth dimension's embrace. A long silence follows. Only the hum remains, the sound of reality breathing. In the still glow of twilight, as cities hum beneath an electric haze and the stars begin to pierce the fabric of night, the documentary's tone deepens. The narration slows, softer now, contemplative yet charged with an undercurrent of unease. If the fifth dimension exists, the voice begins, then its presence should leave traces, not only in equations or the folds of spacetime, but in us. The music lingers low, pulsing with a steady rhythm that feels almost biological. Perhaps the most profound evidence of hidden dimensions lies not in the cosmos, but in consciousness itself. The camera drifts over the human brain, lit in soft neon hues. Neural pathways flicker like constellations, synapses fire in storms of light. For decades, the narrator continues, scientists have searched the brain for the source of awareness, dissecting every structure, every signal. Yet the closer they look, the more elusive the answer becomes. Consciousness is not located anywhere, it simply is. The film draws a parallel: galaxies spinning in the void and neurons firing in the skull. Both systems governed by unseen laws, both connected by invisible threads. What if consciousness is not produced by the brain, the narrator suggests, but accessed through it? What if the brain is not a generator but an antenna, tuned to a higher dimensional frequency? The music grows haunting. A soft, metallic tone resonates as visuals shift to slow-motion sequences of dreamers and sleep studies, their eyes darting beneath closed lids. Dreams, the voice whispers, are the most vivid encounters we have with unseen worlds. They are landscapes unbound by physics, places where time bends, where the dead return, where we remember futures not yet lived. Could they be echoes of the fifth dimension bleeding into our minds? Cut to archival footage of brain scans, waves of color flowing across monitors. Scientists discuss gamma synchronization, the mysterious coherence that arises when the brain enters deep meditative or transcendent states. The narrator explains, in these moments, neural activity becomes harmonized, as if the mind is resonating with something beyond itself. Those who experience it describe sensations of vastness, timelessness, unity, a feeling of touching infinity. Then a contrast, and yet, the narrator continues, modern neuroscience insists that all we are, our thoughts, emotions and memories, are merely chemical reactions in wet tissue. To them, the mind is an illusion, the self a side effect of biology. Pause. But what if the illusion is the other way around? What if matter itself is a projection, and consciousness is the higher dimensional reality from which everything else unfolds? The screen shifts into imagery that feels dreamlike, fractals blossoming like living patterns, particles weaving through lattices of light, ancient symbols dissolving into equations. Quantum physicists have long wrestled with the observer effect, the strange fact that particles behave differently when watched. The act of observation seems to decide reality. Could consciousness itself be the force that collapses possibilities into one world? And if so, where does that force come from? The narrator's tone turns more intimate, as if confiding a secret. Perhaps it comes from the fifth dimension, a domain where all potential versions of reality coexist, and consciousness is the bridge that selects one thread among infinite tapestries. As this idea unfurls, the pacing slows again. The visuals cut to a close-up of a single human eye, the iris swirling with galaxies. You, the voice says, are not a spectator of the universe. You are the universe observing itself through the narrow window of human perception. Your awareness is the interface through which the fifth dimension becomes visible, if only for an instant. The tone shifts to contrast once more. Hope versus disquiet. If that is true, the narrator continues, then our thoughts, our fears, our dreams, are not confined to our skulls. They ripple outward, shaping the world around us. What we call coincidence may be resonance, 2 points of consciousness vibrating in harmony across dimensions. What we call intuition may be the faint whisper of our higher dimensional self. The music swells again, strings layering over deep drones. In laboratories across the world, experiments are beginning to reveal hints of this connection. Random number generators influenced by global events. Particles that seem to respond to mental intention. Statistical anomalies that defy logic yet repeat with eerie precision. Science does not yet know how to explain them. But perhaps, in the language of the fifth dimension, they are not anomalies at all, they are signals. The visuals now blend ancient imagery with modern science. Monks meditating, their brainwaves aligning with geomagnetic fluctuations. Ancient scripts describing the soul's ascent through layers of reality. Every culture, the narrator says, has described consciousness as a journey, a movement upward, inward, beyond. The Egyptians spoke of the duat, the realm of transition. The Hindus of the Akasha, an invisible field of energy and memory. And now, physicists speak of the fifth dimension, a structure that contains not only space and time but possibility itself. Perhaps they have all been speaking of the same thing. The tone grows more cinematic, the pacing more intense. If the fifth dimension holds all possibilities, the narrator continues, then consciousness may be the mechanism that navigates them. Every decision, every thought, every dream could be a movement, a small shift in the higher geometry of existence. Visuals show overlapping timelines diverging and converging, like rivers splitting and rejoining in the light. When you imagine a future, the voice says, you are not inventing it. You are touching it. And when that future comes to pass, it is because your consciousness found its way there first. Then a sharp tonal turn. But such power carries a shadow. If our thoughts shape reality, then fear is no less creative than hope. Anxiety, hatred, despair, these too ripple outward. They shape the invisible scaffolding of possibility, collapsing beautiful futures before they ever unfold. The ghosts of the fifth dimension may not be spirits haunting us, but echoes of the futures we destroyed. The music darkens, the visuals distort subtly, faces flickering, rooms warping like bending glass. Perhaps, the narrator says quietly, every haunted place, every lingering energy, is the residue of a path not taken, a timeline that almost was. We do not see the fifth dimension, but it remembers us. The scene transitions to silence. A single flame burns in an empty room. When ancient mystics spoke of karma, when philosophers spoke of fate, when scientists speak of probability, they may all be touching the same truth, that every action leaves an imprint not just in time, but across the lattice of dimensions. Nothing is lost. Every moment continues, endlessly resonating. The voice becomes softer, more human. This means that when we love, when we forgive, when we create, those acts ripple through the fabric of the fifth dimension. They are not small. They are eternal. The music brightens slightly, light returning through the darkness. The search for the fifth dimension may not end in a laboratory or an equation, the narrator concludes. It may end within us. For perhaps the fifth dimension is not only where the universe expands, it is where we awaken. The final image fades in, a reflection of a person standing before an infinite mirror, their reflection fractaling into eternity. The hum of existence returns, rising and fading like a breath. The narrator whispers the closing thought of the section. To explore the fifth dimension is to explore the mind of reality itself. And somewhere within it, reality is dreaming of you. Beneath the glimmering veil of the night sky, where constellations spin like silent gears of an ancient clock, humanity has always felt the pull of something beyond the visible. The stars whisper of vastness, but in the quiet between them, there lingers a question older than light itself. What if reality is not continuous but layered, stacked like invisible sheets of glass, each vibrating at a slightly different frequency? The narrator's voice returns, softer now, threaded with curiosity and melancholy. If consciousness is the key to perceiving the fifth dimension, the voice says, then perhaps death is the door. The screen fades to black. A single candle flickers to life. Its flame dances in slow motion, each sway mirrored by the faint pulse of a heartbeat. For centuries, the narrator continues, we have feared the end as the final silence, the moment where everything we are dissolves into nothing. But what if death is not destruction but transition, a movement through dimensions too vast for our senses to grasp? The visuals begin to weave a tapestry of human rituals, Egyptian tombs filled with hieroglyphs of ascension, Tibetan monks chanting beneath flickering butter lamps, Victorian seances in candlelit rooms, modern hospital corridors where machines hum softly beside fading lives. Every civilization, the voice says, has sensed something beyond the final breath. They named it differently, spirit, soul, energy, but the intuition was the same, that consciousness does not end. It shifts. The pacing slows, the imagery deepens. Modern science hesitates to follow this thought, the narrator admits. But even in physics, energy does not vanish, it transforms. Information, once created, cannot be truly destroyed. So what happens to the pattern of consciousness, the most complex structure we know, when the body falls silent? A haunting tone builds under the question. Some researchers have begun to explore what they call quantum consciousness, the idea that awareness may be encoded in the fabric of reality itself, in the quantum fields that ripple through the vacuum. If that is true, then perhaps death is not an ending at all, but a change of dimensional state. Visuals transition into dreamlike sequences of light, neural networks dissolving into constellations, heartbeat monitors fading into waves of energy. Imagine a drop of water, the narrator says softly, falling into the ocean. The drop no longer exists as it was, but it has not ceased to be. It has merely become part of something infinite. The tone grows contemplative, reverent. Across near-death experiences, visions, and moments between life and loss, people describe the same sensation, a profound sense of expansion, of being pulled through a tunnel of light, of seeing everything at once. Scientists call it hallucination, mystics call it awakening. But what if it is neither? What if it is the mind slipping into higher dimensional awareness, the first glimpse of the fifth? The camera pans through images of supernovae and neural sparks, drawing parallels between the cosmos and consciousness. When stars die, the narrator continues, they release their essence back into the universe, their light traveling across eons. We call it starlight, but in truth, it is memory, information persisting across spacetime. If the universe preserves the memory of a star, why would it forget the memory of a soul? The contrast shifts, science against spirituality, doubt against wonder. To the rational mind, these ideas seem poetic but empty. The brain, they argue, is finite. Once neurons die, awareness ends. But to the quantum physicist, even death is not simple. The universe does not allow absolute erasure. Energy, pattern, vibration, they are only rearranged. Visuals of particle fields swirl like ghostly waves. What if the fifth dimension is the space where those patterns go, where consciousness reorganizes itself in ways we cannot yet perceive? A soft, echoing chime signals transition. This might explain the countless stories of hauntings, of presences lingering beyond time. Not spirits in the traditional sense, but echoes, dimensional imprints of consciousness not fully detached from our layer of reality. Perhaps these ghosts are travelers caught between frequencies, half in our world, half in another. The imagery turns cinematic, fog rolling through abandoned corridors, faint whispers carried on the wind, flickering lights in a darkened room. When we feel something in an empty place, the narrator says, when the air thickens and the heart quickens, maybe we are brushing against the edge of another dimension. Not supernatural, just unseen. The pacing intensifies, the narration deepens. In 1959, a Russian physicist named Nikolai Kozyrev proposed that time itself carries energy, a torsion field that can store and transmit information. He believed that consciousness interacts with this field, leaving measurable traces long after physical contact ends. Could this be the mechanism through which the fifth dimension reveals itself, not as space but as memory made real? The scene cuts to modern researchers using ultra-sensitive detectors in ancient buildings, measuring anomalies in electromagnetic and gravitational patterns. Time after time they find signatures that defy explanation. Cold spots where energy seems to vanish, echoes where none should exist. Skeptics dismiss it as noise, but what if it is the hum of another reality bleeding through the thin places of our world? The music swells with tension. Perhaps the reason we encounter apparitions, voices, or inexplicable sensations is because the fifth dimension overlaps our own at points of high emotional or energetic resonance. Death, trauma, love, these moments release immense consciousness energy. And where that energy accumulates, the veil weakens. Then silence. The screen fades to the slow movement of clouds over a moonlit sea. We are beings of frequency, the narrator whispers. Our thoughts, our emotions, our bodies, they all vibrate. Death may simply be the moment when that vibration changes tune, when we shift keys in the symphony of existence. The visuals move between micro and macro, cells dividing, galaxies forming, light streaming through prisms. Energy can change form but never be destroyed. Consciousness may follow the same law. It may simply step beyond the visible spectrum, into the higher harmonics of the fifth dimension. The tone turns inward, personal. When we lose someone, we do not lose their essence. We lose their wavelength. But just as a radio station continues to broadcast even when we turn off the receiver, perhaps their signal still resonates, invisibly, eternally. The narration now crescendos. If we accept this, then death itself becomes not a shadow but a doorway. The ghosts we fear may not be remnants of the past, but messengers from beyond the curvature of perception, proof that consciousness is not bound to flesh, nor time, nor the fragile walls of our dimension. A long pause follows. The screen fills with light, brilliant, blinding, pulsing with rhythm. The narrator's voice returns, barely audible, filled with awe. The fifth dimension may not be a place of exile, but of continuation. A realm where every life, every memory, every spark of awareness is woven into the larger pattern of the cosmos. We are the echoes of that pattern, remembering ourselves in fragments. The final image shows the candle's flame again, burning steadily against the darkness. And perhaps, the narrator concludes, the reason the dead do not vanish, the reason their presence lingers in whispers and warmth, is because they have not gone anywhere. They are simply vibrating faster, just beyond our reach, within the heartbeat of the fifth dimension. The flame flickers once, then steadies, bathing the screen in gold. The music fades into the faint hum that has followed since the beginning, the signature of existence itself, looping endlessly. The voice whispers one final line before the silence swallows all. We are not haunted by ghosts. We are haunted by memory, the memory of what we truly are. The morning begins with a single drop of dew trembling on a blade of grass, magnifying the rising sun. The world appears calm, predictable, mechanical. But within that quiet perfection lies chaos. Microscopic, invisible, unrelenting. The narrator's voice returns, deep and measured. Every atom in your body is a storm. Every breath you take is an entanglement with infinity. And somewhere within that chaos hides the fingerprint of the fifth dimension. The visuals transition to the quantum scale, particles shimmering like ghosts, flickering in and out of existence. At the heart of everything, the narrator continues, there is uncertainty. The quantum world does not obey the same rules we do. Particles are waves. Waves are probabilities. Reality is not solid, it is potential waiting to be chosen. A soft pulse of sound builds under the narration, almost like the rhythm of breathing. Physicists call it superposition, the ability of a particle to exist in multiple states at once. But what they don't say is that every observation collapses those possibilities into one. Every act of awareness defines which world becomes real. The screen shifts to deep space imagery, stars folding and unfolding like origami. Now imagine that on a cosmic scale, the narrator says. Every thought, every choice, every collision of atoms across the universe could be the act of reality choosing itself. A fifth dimension, not of space but of selection, where infinite possibilities coexist, waiting for consciousness to illuminate one path. The music deepens. The pacing slows. For centuries, humanity believed the universe to be deterministic, a perfect clockwork where cause and effect ruled supreme. But quantum mechanics shattered that illusion. Beneath the surface of predictability lies a universe built on freedom, probability, and chance. It behaves not like a machine but like a mind. The contrast grows sharper now, science versus mystery. We can measure the particle but not the reason it chooses one state over another. We can describe the outcome but never the why. And yet, patterns emerge. Patterns so precise they suggest an intelligence deeper than chaos. Could that intelligence be the geometry of the fifth dimension itself? The screen fills with simulations of waveforms colliding, each interference pattern resembling fingerprints, sound waves, even the structure of galaxies. When two waves meet, the narrator says, they don't destroy each other. They merge, creating new shapes, new harmonies. The universe seems to behave the same way. Interference, resonance, collapse. Creation through vibration. The camera glides through sound waves that morph into patterns of matter, a visual echo of the phrase, as above, so below. Maybe the fifth dimension isn't another place, the narrator suggests. Maybe it's a rhythm, the underlying frequency that unites all things. The tone softens, then sharpens again, like a pendulum of emotion. But if everything vibrates, then so do we. Our thoughts, our emotions, even our bodies emit frequencies. When we feel love, anger, fear, or peace, we are tuning into different harmonics of the same cosmic field. The question is, who, or what, is listening? A brief silence. Then the sound of a heart beating, slow and resonant. Perhaps the universe itself listens. Perhaps consciousness doesn't just observe the fifth dimension, it participates in it. The visuals become breathtaking, a montage of creation. Cells dividing, oceans crashing, lightning arcing through the sky, galaxies swirling in spirals of light. If the fifth dimension is the medium, the voice continues, then everything alive is part of its music. Each of us, a note in a composition too vast to hear in full. The narration takes on a tone of reverent awe. Quantum entanglement reveals something extraordinary. When two particles become linked, they remain connected no matter the distance between them. Change one and the other responds instantly. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. But what if this spookiness is simply higher dimensional proximity? What if entangled particles are touching, just not in our visible space? The music rises, the imagery turns otherworldly. That would mean that everything once connected remains connected, forever. The atoms in your body were forged in ancient stars. The light that touches your eyes now began its journey before humanity existed. You are, in every measurable way, an entangled being, a ripple across the fifth dimension. The tone darkens with contrast. But this connection cuts both ways. If all things are linked, then destruction, violence, and fear also echo through that web. The same field that carries harmony can carry dissonance. Perhaps that is why moments of deep tragedy are felt across continents, why intuition stirs when someone we love is in danger. The fifth dimension does not distinguish between love and terror, it only amplifies resonance. A deep, rhythmic pulse underscores the growing tension. In this view, morality is not an abstract concept, it's physics. Every action, every thought, sends ripples into the higher geometry of reality. Kindness, cruelty, creation, decay, They all shape the invisible architecture we inhabit. The visuals shift, cities glowing at night, their lights forming neuron-like networks. We have always built worlds in our image, the narrator observes. Our cities mirror our brains, our technology mirrors our imagination. Perhaps the universe is doing the same. Perhaps it too is conscious, and we are its dreams taking form. The tone softens again. Some physicists propose the holographic principle, that our three-dimensional universe is a projection from a higher dimensional boundary. Everything we see, every mountain, every star, every heartbeat, may be an encoded reflection of a deeper truth. The camera zooms into the pupil of an eye, revealing galaxies within it. If the fifth dimension is the source of that projection, then our existence is not separate from it. We are the hologram and the projector, the illusion and the observer. The music quiets to near silence, leaving only the hum of the universe, that recurring motif. This changes everything, the narrator says softly. It means that to understand reality we must look inward as much as outward. The telescope and the mirror are one and the same. The visuals transition into an abstract dance of light, spirals, lattices, threads intertwining. The deeper science looks, the more the universe resembles thought. Equations begin to mirror patterns of language, logic, and perception. It's as if the cosmos itself is speaking in a dialect of mathematics, waiting for us to listen beyond the symbols. A moment of pause. Then, with quiet conviction, the narrator adds, the fifth dimension may not be a place we travel to. It may be the medium through which meaning itself travels, the unseen connection that allows energy, emotion, and intention to ripple through all levels of reality. The scene returns to stillness, a forest, wind brushing through leaves, sunlight scattering across water. If so, the narrator concludes, then we are not observers of the fifth dimension. We are expressions of it, temporary forms through which infinity experiments with itself. The camera rises into the sky, the trees shrinking below, the curvature of the earth appearing once more. The hum grows louder, wrapping around the music like an embrace. Every heartbeat, the voice whispers, is a vibration of the infinite. Every breath is the fifth dimension remembering itself through you. The light fades, leaving only the sound, the pulse of existence itself, steady, eternal, unfinished. The camera opens on the earth at night, a glowing sphere suspended in endless black, its cities shining like neural sparks. From orbit, humanity looks like a single living organism, connected, fragile, luminous. The narrator's voice emerges slowly, calm but pulsing with awe. Every light you see, it says, is a thought. Every city is a neuron. And if we step back far enough, the entire planet begins to look like a mind, one consciousness dreaming across continents. The music swells, low and reverent, as the image fades into swirling clouds over oceans. If consciousness exists not only within us, the voice continues, but throughout reality itself, then the fifth dimension may not be a distant realm. It may be the collective field that binds all minds together, the unseen network through which the universe becomes aware of itself. A transition begins. Scenes of people across the world, a monk meditating in Kyoto, a physicist staring at data in Geneva, a child looking up at the stars in Nairobi. Though separated by culture and language, the narrator says, all of us feel the same instinct, to look beyond, to question, to seek meaning. This shared yearning may not just be coincidence. It may be resonance. A signal from the fifth dimension humming through every human soul. The screen fills with the image of neurons firing in the brain, then cuts to city streets at night, the flow of traffic resembling electrical signals. Patterns repeat, the voice observes. From the smallest scale to the largest, from the synapse to the skyline. It is as though one design echoes through every level of existence. The tone deepens. For decades, scientists have tried to explain this self-similarity, why galaxies, hurricanes, and brainwaves follow the same fractal mathematics. But maybe it's not just mathematics. Maybe it's memory. The fifth dimension could be the archive of cosmic intelligence, shaping everything that emerges into existence. The visuals slow to abstract forms, golden spirals, nested geometries, fractal flowers blooming infinitely. The universe, the narrator says, is not random. It dreams in patterns. Every pattern is a conversation between the visible and the invisible, a dialogue between dimensions. The music fades to a single, resonant note. When ancient mystics spoke of unity, the oneness of all things, they were not speaking in metaphor. They were describing the very architecture of reality. Science is only now catching up. The screen flashes with equations, Einstein's field tensors, quantum wave functions, neural networks. These formulas are humanity's attempts to map the invisible lattice beneath existence. But no equation can capture what it feels like to be alive, to think, to dream. That feeling, the pulse of awareness itself, may be the signature of the fifth dimension flowing through us. The camera transitions to a microscopic view of DNA, spiraling in liquid light. Every molecule of life, the narrator explains, carries information written in code. But code implies language, and language implies intention. If life is a message, who, or what, is the sender? Pause. The visuals turn celestial again, stars forming in nebulae. Perhaps there is no sender, the voice whispers. Perhaps the message writes itself. The fifth dimension may not be a being but a process, the universe eternally expressing itself, through creation and consciousness, through energy and form. The scene shifts to human evolution, primitive hands carving stone, ancient fires flickering in caves. From the moment we became aware of our own awareness, we began to sense the invisible. We created gods, myths, and stories, reflections of the mystery within us. But maybe those myths were never wrong. Maybe they were translations of the fifth dimension, written in human language. The contrast builds, the scientific and the spiritual colliding. Today, the narrator says, we use different words, simulation, holography, quantum field, but the longing remains the same. To understand the source. A montage of faces follows. Different ages, races, emotions, all looking toward the same invisible horizon. In every human heart, the voice continues, there is an echo of that source. We feel it when we fall in love, when we stand before the ocean, when we lose someone and still sense them near. That feeling of connection, that unexplainable knowing, may be the touch of the fifth dimension. The music swells gently, warm and radiant. Some call it empathy, some call it energy, but beneath all names it is the same force. When one person suffers, others feel it. When billions meditate on peace, global fields of random data shift measurably. Consciousness is not isolated. It is entangled across the living world. The visuals show migrating birds, schools of fish, swarming fireflies, nature's symphonies of synchronization. From the flock to the forest, from the brain to the biosphere, intelligence is collective. It flows like water through networks of life. The fifth dimension may be the current that carries it, a web of meaning linking every consciousness from atoms to galaxies. Then the tone darkens, shifting from wonder to unease. But connection comes with consequence. When billions of minds fear, hate, or despair, that vibration echoes too. The fifth dimension amplifies what we feed it. Our thoughts do not vanish, they imprint upon the very geometry of existence. The screen shows storm clouds forming, lightning flashing through the dark. We are not just passengers of reality. We are participants. Every choice adds to the pattern. Every emotion reshapes the field. The future is not waiting, it is responding. A moment of silence follows. The music softens and the voice becomes introspective. If this is true, then the universe is not merely expanding outward, it is expanding inward through us. Every breakthrough in science, every act of compassion, every work of art is the fifth dimension remembering itself through the human form. The visuals grow luminous again. Michelangelo's hands reaching across the Sistine ceiling, circuitry glowing in a supercomputer, a dancer suspended in motion, galaxies blooming in slow motion. We are not separate from the source, the narrator continues. We are the continuation of its expression, consciousness folded into consciousness, endlessly reflecting itself. Then the tone sharpens to a whisper. But there is a question that science cannot answer. Why? Why does the universe seek to know itself? Why this hunger to reflect, to create, to remember? The music builds to a crescendo, echoing with tension. Perhaps the fifth dimension is not only geometry, perhaps it is desire. The yearning of reality to become aware. The same impulse that drives stars to ignite and humans to dream. The final visuals fade into abstraction, cosmic waves flowing through the outline of a human face. Every heartbeat, the narrator says, is a pulse of that same desire. Every thought is a spark of the universal mind illuminating itself. We are not separate observers, we are its eyes. The last scene lingers on Earth once more, half in shadow, half in light. And as our collective awareness grows, the voice concludes, so too does the universe's ability to perceive itself. The fifth dimension is not waiting to be discovered. It is waiting to awaken. The music dissolves into silence, leaving only the hum, soft, eternal, resonant, like the heartbeat of something infinite listening back. The film opens in silence. A single drop of water falls onto a smooth surface, creating a ripple that expands outward endlessly. Then, as if mirrored, the image of a galaxy appears, its spiral arms echoing the same ripple pattern, vast and infinite. The narrator's voice enters, soft but precise, a tone of reverent curiosity, patterns within patterns, ripples within ripples. From the smallest vibration of an atom to the turning of galaxies, reality repeats itself. Could it be that the fifth dimension is not a place we must travel to but a frequency, one woven into the very structure of space and time? The scene transitions to ancient stone circles under a blazing sunset. For thousands of years, the narrator continues, civilizations built monuments aligned with stars, believing the heavens and earth to be connected by invisible threads. To them, time was not a line but a loop, an eternal rhythm. They understood something modern science is only beginning to rediscover. That reality hums, that all things vibrate, and that through resonance, the visible and the invisible can touch. A low-frequency hum begins to resonate through the soundscape as images of tuning forks, strings, and resonant chambers appear. Every frequency, every wave, the narrator explains, exists not in isolation but as part of a symphony. When waves overlap perfectly, they amplify one another, resonance. When they clash, they cancel, silence. The fifth dimension may function in the same way, not as a hidden layer of space, but as a field of resonance between dimensions. The visual cuts to a physicist's lab, oscilloscopes flicker, lasers pulse in rhythmic intervals. In quantum mechanics, the voice says, particles are not solid things but standing waves in a field. They flicker between existence and non-existence millions of times per second. What we call matter may simply be resonance made stable, consciousness frozen in vibration. A dramatic shift. Underwater footage of dolphins communicating in sonar clicks, then to a human MRI scan showing waves of neural activity across the brain. Sound, light, thought, all are frequencies. What we feel, see, and think are not things but vibrations translated by the mind. Could consciousness itself be a resonant bridge between dimensions? The narration grows more reflective. If so, then perhaps the fifth dimension is all around us, humming, vibrating, unseen because it does not reflect light but awareness. To touch it, we do not need telescopes. We need stillness. The visuals soften. A monk meditating, a musician tuning a string instrument, a scientist measuring brainwaves during deep meditation. In states of silence, the voice continues, the brain's rhythms change. Alpha, theta, gamma waves synchronize into harmonic coherence. In that coherence, individuals often report visions, sensations of floating, timelessness, unity. Could they be tuning into a fifth-dimensional frequency, not fantasy but physics? The screen shows ripples of color, like auroras pulsing across the dark. Across history, the narrator says, prophets, artists, and mystics spoke of divine revelation. They described luminous realms, beings of light, timeless knowledge. Perhaps they were not stepping into heaven, but into resonance with a higher dimension. The fifth dimension may reveal itself not through technology, but through consciousness tuned precisely to its vibration. The music rises with slow rhythmic power, drumbeats matching a heartbeat. Every human emotion has a frequency, the voice continues. Fear contracts, lowering the vibration. Love expands, raising it. Hate dissonates, fragmenting the field. The collective emotional state of humanity could determine our resonance with the fifth dimension. When we align with harmony, empathy, awe, unity, we move closer. When we descend into chaos, we drift away. The imagery turns darker. Riots, pollution, war, flickering screens. For centuries, the narrator says solemnly, our species has amplified dissonance. We've tuned the planetary field to noise. But the fifth dimension does not vanish. It waits, humming just beyond perception, waiting for coherence. A brief silence follows, then the tone shifts toward hope. Throughout history there have been moments, sudden luminous shifts, when humanity seemed to awaken. The Renaissance, the Enlightenment, the scientific revolution. These may not have been mere cultural phenomena. They may have been harmonics, pulses of resonance between the fourth and fifth dimensions, allowing truth to flood into human consciousness. The visuals accelerate, Da Vinci sketches, telescopes, equations, DNA strands, microchips, and human eyes filled with wonder. Each awakening, the narrator says, was like a note struck true, echoing through time. When enough minds resonate, reality itself begins to change. We invent, evolve, transcend. We glimpse the hidden architecture of creation. The camera zooms into a drop of water again, but now the ripples are overlaid with galaxies. If we are beings of resonance, the voice continues, then the fifth dimension is the song we are all part of, the frequency of consciousness itself. When we understand this, the concept of higher or lower dimensions dissolves. There are only layers of vibration, infinite octaves of existence. The music becomes ethereal, expanding outward like waves of light. Imagine, the narrator whispers, that every thought, every heartbeat, every breath sends ripples through reality, subtle, invisible, eternal. These ripples travel through the fifth dimension, affecting not just our present but our future and past. In this way we are composers, shaping time itself through vibration. The scene transitions to a time-lapse of people in motion, cities pulsating like breathing organisms. If time is a wave, the voice says, then every moment is connected to every other. The fifth dimension allows interference, echoes from the future shaping the now, ripples from the past resonating forward. Déjà vu, intuition, prophecy, these may not be accidents but feedback from other temporal layers vibrating through the same field. The visuals merge, a conductor leading an invisible orchestra, stars pulsing to rhythm, neurons firing in sync with galaxies rotating. Reality, the narrator says, is music written in geometry. The fifth dimension is its harmony, the space between the notes where meaning lives. The tone deepens, drawing the viewer into contemplation. When you listen deeply enough, silence itself sings. That song, faint, infinite, may be the voice of the cosmos, whispering through every atom, every star, every soul. It is the hum that unites all things. Then the sound fades into near silence, broken only by the sound of a slow heartbeat. And yet, the narrator continues quietly, for most of human history we have been deaf to that hum. Our ears filled with noise, our hearts tuned to chaos. The task of the future is not to conquer the fifth dimension, but to remember it, to listen again. The final visuals show people around the world closing their eyes. A child in a classroom, a scientist in a lab, an elder beneath the stars. The heartbeat merges with a steady tone, a single sustained note that seems to vibrate beyond hearing. Every one of us, the voice concludes, is a frequency. And together, we are the chord of creation, the song through which the fifth dimension dreams itself into being. The screen fades to black. The tone lingers, a vibration felt rather than heard. The silence afterward feels sacred, like standing at the edge of a great revelation. The screen opens with slow-motion footage of ink dispersing through clear water, tendrils spiraling outward like galaxies unfolding in miniature. The narrator's voice begins, measured and reflective. We like to think of time as a line. A single thread stretching from the past to the future, from birth to death, from cause to effect. But what if this line is only a shadow, a projection of something far more intricate? What if the fifth dimension does not simply hold space but time itself, wrapped in ways we can barely imagine? The visuals shift to the inside of a clock, gears turning, hands ticking, the rhythmic pulse of seconds passing. Then suddenly the movement slows, freezes and reverses. Our perception of time, the narrator continues, is bound to motion. The earth spins, our hearts beat, our minds measure change. Yet deep within the equations of physics, time behaves like a dimension, one that does not flow but exists all at once. We cut to the voice of Einstein, layered faintly beneath the soundscape. The distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. The narrator follows. In relativity, time is not a river but a landscape. Every moment that has ever existed, and will ever exist, still lies within the spacetime fabric. We merely move through it like travelers crossing a terrain that is already there. The scene transitions into a vast three-dimensional grid, a shimmering matrix representing spacetime. But what lies beyond that terrain? The voice asks softly. If time is woven into four-dimensional spacetime, then what happens when it folds, when reality loops back on itself through the fifth? The grid bends and curls, creating a spiral that collapses inward, revealing scenes of human history flashing like memories, pyramids rising, revolutions igniting, rockets launching into the void. Physicists have long theorized that higher dimensions could allow shortcuts through space and time, wormholes, bridges, folds in the cosmic fabric. In the fifth dimension, such phenomena may not just be possible. They may be natural. The camera zooms into one of these folds, a tunnel of light spinning through infinite reflections. Imagine a realm, the narrator says, where every possible version of time exists simultaneously, where alternate histories and unrealized futures overlap, vibrating in parallel. The fifth dimension may be the stage upon which all timelines coexist, branching endlessly like a tree of light. The visuals shift to a tree viewed from below, its branches fractal and infinite, each glowing with a faint pulse. To move through the fifth dimension, the voice continues, would not be to travel faster than light, but to shift frequency, to tune one's consciousness to another branch of the same cosmic tree. As the camera moves closer, each branch reveals worlds, moments, choices. A soldier turns left instead of right. A scientist decides to share her discovery instead of hiding it. A child chooses to speak instead of staying silent. Every choice, the narrator whispers, creates a divergence. Each possibility a timeline. But where do they all go? Do they vanish? Or do they persist, layered atop one another in the invisible architecture of the fifth dimension? The visuals flicker between possible realities, a city thriving, the same city in ruins, a forest untouched, the same forest burned. Quantum mechanics suggests that all possible states of matter exist until observed. Perhaps the universe itself behaves the same way. The fifth dimension could be the library of every version of reality, every potential path, every alternate history, every dream not chosen. The music deepens, haunting and ethereal. If that is true, the narrator continues, then consciousness may be the navigator, the needle that moves through this infinite fabric, selecting one thread of possibility from countless others. In this way, the fifth dimension is not separate from us. It unfolds through our choices. A scene fades in, a person standing at a crossroads, countless luminous paths extending in all directions, each shimmering with potential. Every decision you make, the voice says, creates a ripple not only through your life but through time itself. Those ripples may continue, unseen, shaping the world in ways you may never know. The camera zooms into the person's eye, within it, galaxies swirl. In quantum theory, observation collapses probability into reality. To observe is to choose. If consciousness interacts with the fifth dimension, then every thought, every act of will, every vision of the future may sculpt the path we move along. The tone grows more intimate, contemplative. Perhaps déjà vu is not memory but resonance, a moment when two versions of reality briefly overlap. Perhaps dreams are not illusions, but echoes of alternate timelines bleeding through the fifth dimension. And perhaps intuition, that quiet inner knowing, is the soul's memory of choices it has already made in other realms. The visuals transform into overlapping timelines, threads weaving together into a luminous tapestry. Time does not flow. It folds, the narrator says. Past, present, and future may coexist in layers, resonating within the fifth dimension like chords within a single symphony. What we perceive as destiny may be harmony, the alignment of moments across multiple layers of time. Then the imagery darkens, storms brewing, fragments of time disintegrating into chaos. But harmony can falter, the voice warns. When humanity acts in dissonance, when fear and greed dominate our collective choices, we fracture the resonance between timelines. The world begins to feel unstable, chaotic, uncertain. It may not be coincidence that such turmoil reflects an imbalance in the deeper structure of time itself. A long pause. The music softens again, shifting to warmth and awe. And yet, within chaos lies creation. Just as storms birth lightning, disruption births evolution. Each crisis, each collapse, may be the universe's way of nudging us toward alignment, pushing our consciousness closer to coherence with the fifth dimension. The imagery shifts to people helping each other in moments of disaster, innovation emerging from struggle, life regenerating after destruction. When humanity acts in unity, the voice says, our timelines converge. The probability field narrows, coherence strengthens, and the universe itself becomes more ordered. We become co-authors of reality, not victims of time but sculptors of it. A brief silence follows as the visuals fade into deep space, a clock dissolving into starlight. If we could perceive the fifth dimension, the narrator continues, we would see not one line of history but an ocean of time, every moment connected, every outcome alive. The soul, perhaps, does not travel forward through life. It drifts through this ocean, learning from each wave, gathering fragments of experience from countless versions of itself. The screen glows with light, a soul-shaped silhouette drifting through rippling layers of time. In the end, the voice says softly, death itself may be a change of frequency, the moment when consciousness steps out of the fourth dimension of time and into the timeless flow of the fifth. What we call endings may be openings, what we call loss, translation. The visuals blur into abstraction, stars moving backward, time reversing until everything becomes one single moment of white light. Perhaps the universe is not aging but remembering, Perhaps we are not moving through time but awakening within it. The fifth dimension is not our destination. It is the memory of all that ever was and will be, eternally unfolding. The scene fades to darkness. A single clock hand ticks once, and then stops. Silence. The narrator whispers one last line. Every moment you live has already happened and is happening still, across an infinity of timelines. The question is, which one will you choose to remember? The silence lingers long after the voice fades, the faint hum of the fifth dimension pulsing just beneath it, eternal, unseen, alive. The screen begins in near darkness. A faint vibration builds, a low, trembling hum that feels more than it sounds. Slowly, a beam of light cuts through the void, illuminating a human silhouette standing alone amid shifting waves of shadow. The narrator's voice enters, hushed and deliberate. In every age, humans have sensed a presence just beyond sight, something watching, whispering, influencing the edges of our reality. We called them angels, spirits, gods, or ghosts. But what if these apparitions were not supernatural at all? What if they were visitors from the fifth dimension? The light flickers, revealing the outline of old cathedral arches, then dissolves into glowing geometric grids. For millennia, the voice continues, humanity has described encounters with beings of light, entities that appear and vanish, traverse walls, distort time, or communicate through thought. Science dismissed them as myth. But if the fifth dimension interlaces with our four-dimensional world, such events may be moments of intersection, points where realities overlap, like two frequencies briefly resonating. The visuals transition to slow-motion footage of water ripples crossing each other, creating interference patterns that form and vanish. Just as waves can interfere, the narrator explains, so too can dimensions. When the fifth dimension brushes against ours, it may produce what we interpret as anomalies, flickering shadows, sudden temperature shifts, feelings of presence. These are not hauntings. They are harmonics. The tone becomes deeper, more contemplative. The ancient Egyptians spoke of the Ka, a subtle body of energy that lived alongside the physical form. In India, it was called the prana, or Atman. In modern physics, we might call it the quantum field, a matrix of pure information. These traditions may have been describing the same thing, the bridge between matter and consciousness, the echo of the fifth dimension within us. The visuals show overlapping human silhouettes, one material, one made of shimmering light, moving in unison. When we die, the narrator continues, perhaps the body dissolves but the resonance remains, the pattern of consciousness continuing to vibrate beyond our visible spectrum. What we call ghosts may be the afterimages of souls transitioning into fifth-dimensional form, still echoing within our frequency. The camera drifts through empty hallways, light flickering softly. In recent decades, scientists have begun to measure strange correlations, fluctuations in electromagnetic fields coinciding with emotional or psychic phenomena, anomalies in time perception near sites of intense emotion. Could it be that powerful human experiences, love, grief, trauma, leave imprints upon the fifth dimension like fingerprints pressed into reality's fabric? A slow montage follows. Ruins, battlefields, temples, ancient cities swallowed by time. Every place holds memory, the narrator whispers. Stone absorbs story. The air itself remembers. These echoes may not be superstition, but residual resonances, dimensional imprints left by consciousness interacting with the fifth dimension. The scene changes to a laboratory, where scientists monitor delicate instruments measuring fluctuations in quantum noise. Across the world, the voice continues, researchers in quantum consciousness are beginning to find hints that the mind can influence random systems, that intention itself shapes probability. These results may be primitive glimpses of the same principle, the fifth dimension responding to thought as thought resonates with it. The tone shifts, becoming almost sacred. If this is true, then the fifth dimension is not distant. It listens, remembers. It records every vibration of consciousness, every act of kindness, every cruelty, every unspoken hope. We do not exist apart from it. We exist within it, woven from its frequencies. The music deepens, slow piano, ethereal strings. Across ancient texts, there are stories of beings who descend from light, who guide civilizations, whisper wisdom, and vanish without trace. Perhaps they were not gods in the mythic sense, but entities whose consciousness operates fully within the fifth dimension, capable of appearing in our reality as easily as we walk through rooms. The visuals become surreal, luminous humanoid shapes emerging from fields of color, their forms fluid, shifting between geometry and organic motion. Such entities, the narrator explains, would not experience time as we do. To them, past and future would be visible like landscapes. Their awareness would stretch across timelines, allowing them to intervene in moments of crisis or inspiration. They would seem divine, yet they would simply be more awake. A brief silence follows. Then the voice grows quieter, almost intimate. If we encountered such beings today, would we recognize them? Or would we mistake their presence for madness, hallucination, or haunting? Perhaps they have always been here, moving unseen through our world, watching as we struggle to open our eyes to the full architecture of existence. The imagery turns to faces in crowds, strangers passing each other, brief, unexplained moments of connection. Sometimes, the narrator says, you meet someone and feel as though you've known them forever. Or you dream of a face before seeing it in waking life. These coincidences may be more than chance. They could be moments of dimensional resonance, flickers of awareness shared across parallel versions of yourself. The screen flashes between dream imagery and waking reality, a surreal blur of places, memories, and faces. Dreams, the narrator continues, may be the consciousness's natural bridge into the fifth dimension. When the physical senses rest, the mind roams beyond the linear flow of time, glimpsing other layers of existence. That is why dreams feel both infinite and fragile, because they are real but not stable in our frequency. The music shifts, blending choirs and electronic tones. Throughout human history, the narrator says, we've sought communion with the unseen, through prayer, trance, art, and science. Shamans entered altered states to speak with spirits. Today, neuroscientists explore entanglement and non-local consciousness. The language has changed, but the pursuit remains the same, to reach across the veil between dimensions. The scene transitions to footage of a human brain in real-time fMRI, glowing with electrical storms. What if the human brain itself is a multidimensional receiver, the voice suggests, an instrument designed not just to survive in the physical world, but to interpret echoes from higher dimensions. In moments of insight, creativity, or near-death, we may momentarily open the channel wider. The camera moves through a cascade of colors, neural patterns blending with galaxies. In those moments, the narrator continues, people report visions of light, voices of unity, and timeless understanding. Their descriptions are eerily consistent across cultures and eras. Maybe they are not hallucinating. Maybe they are remembering what their consciousness truly is, a fifth-dimensional vibration temporarily experiencing a body. The tone turns solemn but hopeful. If every consciousness is a fragment of the fifth dimension, a note within its eternal chord, then death, separation, and isolation are illusions of the fourth dimension. In truth, we have never been apart from the field that connects all things. We are waves returning to the ocean from which we came. A slow montage follows. Funerals, births, stars exploding, trees growing, cycles of ending and renewal. The ghosts we fear, the voice says softly, may not be the dead, but the echoes of our own unrealized selves. Versions of us lingering in other layers, calling out, reminding us that existence is not linear, that life and death are harmonics of the same song. The imagery fades into a tranquil ocean at dusk. The water is still, reflecting the stars. One day, the narrator concludes, we may learn to listen deeply enough to hear the faint whisper of that dimension, not as terror but as truth. When that day comes, the boundary between life and afterlife, between matter and meaning, will dissolve. The ghosts will no longer haunt us, for we will finally understand that they are us, remembering ourselves from beyond the veil. The final scene shows the silhouette of the same person from the beginning, now illuminated by a vast aurora of light, their form dissolving into luminous patterns that merge with the stars. The hum returns, steady, infinite, like the heartbeat of the universe acknowledging its reflection. The film opens with the image of Earth seen from deep space, half shrouded in shadow, half bathed in sunlight. The planet turns slowly, wrapped in a thin film of atmosphere like a fragile thought drifting through the void. The narrator's voice begins, low and deliberate, carrying both wonder and gravity. We stand on a small blue world suspended in infinity, convinced that we understand where we are and what we are. But what if our entire reality is not what it seems? What if the fifth dimension is not out there, but the framework that creates the illusion we call the universe? The visual fades into a digital simulation, grids of light forming stars, galaxies, and worlds as if rendered by invisible code. For decades, the voice continues, scientists have debated whether the universe is fundamental or emergent. Do particles truly exist, or are they projections from a deeper layer of information? The idea of a simulated reality, once dismissed as science fiction, has begun to merge with modern physics. Perhaps the fifth dimension is the code beneath the illusion, the operating system of existence itself. The camera dives into the grid. Light becomes data, galaxies become streams of binary, and then the pattern collapses into the intricate weave of neural connections inside a human brain. The more we look, the narrator explains, the more we find similarity between the cosmos and the mind. The universe behaves like a computer, but not one made of metal or silicon. It computes through relationships, through vibration, through consciousness. Every atom, every photon, is a bit of information interacting within a grand design. The tone turns philosophical. If that's true, the narrator says softly, then the fifth dimension may be the code layer of reality, a space of pure information from which our physical universe is rendered. Space and time are the interface. Matter and energy are the output. We are players inside the game, yet made of the same light that projects it. The scene cuts to ancient texts, the Vedas, the Hermetic tablets, the Tao Te Ching. Across civilizations, the voice continues, there were whispers of this truth long before the digital age. The Hermetic philosophers called it the mind of God. Hindu mystics named it Maya, the cosmic illusion. They all described reality as a projection of consciousness, where the world of form hides a deeper intelligence. Today, quantum physics may be catching up to their poetry. The music builds, a rhythmic pulse that feels like data being transmitted. In quantum theory, the narrator explains, particles exist in superposition, in all possible states at once, until observed. The observer does not just witness reality. The observer creates it. The fifth dimension could be the realm of all those possibilities, a database of every potential state of existence waiting to be rendered through awareness. The visuals transform into infinite branching paths of light, like a living decision tree expanding across space. Every choice you make, the voice continues, collapses one probability and gives birth to countless others. The multiverse is not distant. It is woven into the same informational field. The fifth dimension is the server that holds it all. The screen fills with holographic equations floating in black space. In 2003, the narrator recalls, physicist James Gates found strings of computer error-correcting code, the same kind used in digital browsers, hidden inside the equations of supersymmetry. When asked what it meant, he said, "It's as if the universe is written in code." Maybe he was right. Maybe we are the code, perceiving itself. The camera zooms through these equations until they dissolve into strands of DNA. Life, the voice says, is information made flesh. Each cell is a processor, each gene a line of code. But who, or what wrote it? Did consciousness evolve from matter, or did matter evolve from consciousness? If the fifth dimension is the substrate of all information, then life is the way it learns to know itself. The tone grows darker, reflective. But if reality is a simulation, if all we know is generated by hidden structures of information, what does that mean for free will? Are we programmed to act, or are we the programmers dreaming from within the code? The visuals shift. A hand touches a holographic wall, and the wall ripples like water. Perhaps both are true, the narrator muses. We are subroutines within a vast consciousness, fragments of the cosmic mind exploring itself through endless combinations. The fifth dimension is not a cage. It is the memory of the dreamer. The music softens, and the imagery changes to a forest bathed in golden light. To see the fifth dimension, the voice says, is not to escape the simulation but to awaken within it, to realize that what we call physical reality is the imagination of a higher consciousness, and that we share in that same power. The narration deepens in tone. If our thoughts are part of that system, then every belief, every emotion, every act of creation rewrites the local code. Prayer, intention, art, invention, these are not passive acts. They are commands to the universe's source code. When we imagine, we program. The visuals accelerate, flashes of inventions, revolutions, acts of love, protests, discoveries. Throughout history, the voice continues, humanity has unknowingly hacked the simulation. Fire, language, electricity, quantum mechanics. Each breakthrough a new patch in reality's unfolding code. Perhaps evolution itself is not random but directed, a self-learning system refining its own awareness through the beings it creates. The screen turns black. Then, one by one, points of light appear, not stars but digital nodes connecting into a vast web. If the fifth dimension is the true substrate, the narrator says, then death does not end the program. Consciousness simply detaches from the rendered world and returns to the field of information, to the source that generates all experiences. The music becomes ethereal. Every memory, every dream, every moment of love or loss, the voice says, is stored within that field. Nothing is forgotten. Reality is archival. Eternity is not endless time, it is infinite data woven through dimensions. The tone turns introspective, almost like a whisper. When mystics throughout history described enlightenment, they often said they felt the universe become transparent, as though the illusion dropped away and only light remained. That light may not be metaphorical. It may be the fifth dimension's pure data, seen without the filters of physical perception. The camera zooms into an eye reflecting a digital matrix. And so, the narrator says softly, to awaken is to remember the code, to realize that every wall, every rule, every law of nature is malleable, because the structure of reality responds to consciousness itself. The fifth dimension is not a distant realm to be reached. It is the source code we are written in. Pause. The screen fades into a dark void again, but now a single glowing symbol, a mandala made of light, begins to spin slowly. If this is true, the narrator says, then the question is not whether the universe is simulated but who, or what, is running it. Is it an intelligence outside us, or the collective field of consciousness that is us? The mandala expands, revealing countless copies of itself spiraling into infinity. In truth, the narrator concludes, there may be no outside, no boundary between the observer and the observed. The fifth dimension may be the universal self, dreaming endlessly, playing all roles, writing and reading its own story. The visuals fade to the image of a human face dissolving into light, merging with the stars. Every equation, every heartbeat, every atom, the voice says quietly, is a line of code written by awareness. We are not prisoners of the simulation. We are its authors, learning, remembering, rewriting. The final line comes like a revelation, gentle but absolute. And when the last illusion fades, when the dreamer wakes, the universe will realize there was never code at all, only consciousness imagining itself as light. The image of Earth returns, the same as in the opening shot, but now within every city light, faint geometric grids shimmer briefly, hinting that reality itself is aware of being seen. The hum returns, low, harmonic, infinite. The stars fade into view, scattered like memories across the blackness. A voice whispers softly, almost from within the silence itself, what if the fifth dimension was never beyond us, but within us all along? The camera drifts over Earth at twilight, city lights glowing like neurons, oceans shimmering in quiet rhythm. Every thought, every emotion, every heartbeat, the narrator continues, is a vibration that ripples through the unseen layers of reality. We are not separate from the cosmos. We are its consciousness made flesh. The music deepens, blending strings with faint echoes of breath. The fifth dimension is not a place to reach, the voice says. It is the realization that everything is connected, that every action echoes through eternity, and every soul is a reflection of the same infinite source. The visuals shift to people gazing at the sky, a child, an elder, a scientist, all lit by the same starlight. Perhaps, the narrator concludes, the ghosts of the fifth dimension are not lost spirits, but the echoes of ourselves, memories of what we were and visions of what we might yet become. To awaken is simply to remember that we have always been infinite. The music fades to a single note, vibrating softly until it disappears into silence.